College football's biggest power brokers are meeting this week, and the conversation isn't just about playoff expansion, it's about survival. What does that mean for Clemson and the ACC? That's all coming up right now on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of this show, Locked On Clemson, and part-time host and producer over on 105.5 and 97.5 The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're new to the show, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button and the notification bell if you're over on YouTube so you never miss an episode. I put out exclusive Clemson content every single weekday, every single week. And don't forget to follow me over on X at The Morgan T Show, where my typical antics are, memes and charts and other things that we like to talk about. Clemson, all encompassing for sure. Today, I have a huge rundown. We're going to talk about this new championship weekend play-in model and about how expansion and survival and money is going to reshape the postseason and possibly Clemson's path to the national title. How does this all work? Why is the SEC and the Big Ten pushing for this? And how does Clemson fit in all of this? How do they rethink their place in the ACC? Or should they even rethink their place in the ACC? Segment one, I'll just get you started off. Let's talk about it. Let's dive right into it. A couple of articles came out on Yahoo Sports that I thought were really interesting about the meetings that were coming up this week in the college football powers that be are meeting to figure out what they're going to do in the postseason in 2026 and going forward. Now, I talked about this last episode, and I wanted to kind of add more to that because there's been more and more coming out that I really feel like college football fans like myself should be keeping their ear close to the ground, should be paying attention to. The college football leaders are meeting in New Orleans this week to discuss college football expansion. That's right. We just expanded, Morgan. Nope. They want to expand again. 4 to 12 to possibly 14, 16, maybe even more. Who knows? Hopefully it's not a field of 68 like the NCAA tournament, but I wouldn't be surprised, as we'll get into, that other sports in college athletics also expand their postseason, all falling back to money. All right. Show me the money. Schools have to now face a revenue sharing requirement per the legal situation that we're in right now, which I think is best. I think this is a model that is much better than NIL, pay for play, under the table. Hey, you come here, there, tampering all over the place. I would much rather a player pick a school because that's where they want to go to school. And then that player, because that's where they chose, can make a portion of revenue from what that school earned throughout the season that they played in the sport during that season. So to me, revenue sharing makes the most sense. That would be the most fair way of doing it. Right now, with NIL and boosters backing everything, I don't like it. I don't like it because it's basically you and I, well, really maybe not you and I, but the big dogs, the big money players are almost manipulating the market like they manipulate the stock market. You got enough money to put in, you pull this all together, and you can manipulate the player market just like you're manipulating the stock market. And I don't like it. It's not really regulated. As we know, players are jumping ship to other teams with just the idea of making more money, not because they want to play more or, a lot of them do, but they just really, money is the big thing. Now, I, again, like this revenue sharing requirement. And they're going to start out incrementally. It's going to be, I think they're going to eventually go to a percentage, but right now it's going to be $20 million in revenue sharing is the maximum that you can give out. And that'll be for across the board. Now, not every team will be able to give all that out, but that's what they're going to be able to do. Have to be the $20 million in revenue. So Clemson and other teams, now they're allowed to split it up the way they want to split it up, but right now, a lot of them are going into a model where it's heavy football, which makes sense. That's the revenue generating sport. and then men's basketball, and then maybe a very small percentage being, baseball and maybe some other sports that they can move around, but football really being the big deal. Now, there are some teams out there or some universities that are more basketball schools. Maybe they flip it a little bit and do more basketball. We'll have to see what goes on this summer and see how they allocate it. I know Clemson has already mentioned on the radio plenty of times and Graham Neff has said that they're going to go full on football and men's basketball, and really everybody else gets a very small percentage instead of making it more equal. Now, there's a lot of debate over equality with that when it comes to men's and women's sports. We had some back and forth with that. Now it seems like it's squashed for the moment, but I think it'll keep coming up for sure, because you're not, it's really all about the football team, which I understand that's your revenue generating sport. But when you're having to share it back with the player, then you are losing revenue that you're bringing in. It's kind of like a little bit of in some terms, you kind of think of it like a tax. Well, what happens when you tax something or you tariff something? Well, they just jack up the prices even more for the consumer, and it's just a trickle down effect. Well, we're kind of probably going to see that in this way is, hey, the schools are having to lose, some of their money and reallocate it, if you will, to players. Well, they're not going to be okay with just making $20 million less. Oh no, that's not how it's going to go. They're going to make up that $20 million. And we're already seeing it in the form of talent fees. Yeah, that's right. You're going to see talent fee percentages at Clemson, at Tennessee, and many other high profile schools coming up in the next couple of years, where it's trying to make up for that gap. They're not going to just be okay with sending money outside to players without recouping that from guess who? Me and you. Now, they're not having to donate to a booster club and we don't know where the money's going. We are going to donate, or we are going to put our money into ticket sales and revenue generation and things like that have to do with the event. And I'm actually more for that than just giving to an NIL entity and not knowing where that money went. I really don't like that at all, and hoping that it went to the players that matter the most. I really don't like that at all. I like where I'm getting something out of it. I'm getting a t-shirt, a jersey, I'm getting popcorn, I'm getting a ticket to an event, and then you are then distributing some of that revenue generation to the players. I like that much more. Now, what's another way other than increasing the fees and putting it back on us? The other way that they're going to try to do this, from what I'm reading here, is that the only way to really truly make up the money fast and quickly is to have more games. Well, I know what you're thinking. Morgan, more games would be great. More games equal more TV time equal more revenue. So the TV revenue is king. We know that ticket sales do help, but they're nowhere near as important as those big time media rights deals. And we'll get into that and how it affects Clemson, because as you know, if you've been following Clemson or you're a Clemson fan, you're probably thinking, Morgan, this doesn't sound very good, because you're talking about ticket sales, you're talking about TV revenue generation. And we know that the ACC doesn't have that really awesome TV deal that the other conferences do. And I'll just say, hey, hold your questions to the next segment. Hold your questions. All right. Breaking down the play-in model. Now, I looked into this because they're going to propose that the college football playoffs kind of start at championship weekend, and championship weekend kind of become, instead of just one game with the champions, it become one game with the champions for your title, but then there'll be play-in games for those other spots. Now, if you listen to the episode yesterday on Monday, you know that we saw where they're going to propose, and we know that the SEC and the Big Ten have all the leverage, but they're going to propose a model where it's 4 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams, 2 ACC teams, 2 Big 12 teams, 1 Group of 5 team, and 1 at-large team that we probably assume is always going to be Notre Dame, or most of the time going to be Notre Dame. So how are they going to get to those 4 teams in the SEC if they're just going to have one conference championship game? Well, they're not going to be able to do that anymore. And they're going to say, well, it's because we need to fill those 4 spots. But they're wanting to do this all because they need to get that more TV revenue so that they can continue to offset what they're losing and having to pay players, which again, it's kind of like they made their own bed with this, and they do need to pay the players legitimately. So I'm not hating against this. I'm just saying championship weekend could look a lot different. And I don't know how I feel about it yet, because college football is just changing so much. Now think about it this way. Let me give you a guesstimation of what a title championship weekend could be. The SEC has a title game between Georgia and Texas. Well, that's going to be your number one seed coming from the SEC. I don't know if they'll really be a true number one seed, but that'll be your top team coming from the SEC for their 4 teams that they're going to be allowed to get. Now we're talking about this starting in 2026 too, but play-in games could be Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, South Carolina. The winner of those 3 games go fill in the remaining 3 spots that they have. So the 3 winners there, coupled with say Texas, Georgia, whoever wins that game. Let's say Georgia wins, then you'd have Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU. Let's say those teams win. Well, now you've got your 4 teams. So now you've got a playoff weekend or a championship weekend extravaganza, and you're getting more games televised, and you're getting more tickets sold, and you're getting more people to watch your games, and that's going to help with their overall revenue and ultimately make up for the gap that they're losing having to pay players. All right. Think about the Big Ten. You got Oregon, Penn State, and then you're going to have Michigan, Ohio State. Oregon, Penn State's going to be maybe your title game. Michigan, Ohio State play-in game. Minnesota, Indiana play-in game. Iowa, Illinois play-in game, and those teams will go. But think about the ACC. Think about the Big 12. You, as Clemson fan, you're not going to get that. You're not going to have an opportunity to be one of the 8 teams that could compete in this. 8 SEC teams are going to be able to compete at the end of the season to get into the playoffs. No, that's not how the ACC is going to get it. The ACC is going to get 2, and they're going to be basically having their own championship game as we've always known it. So while the Big Ten gets their championship extravaganza and the SEC gets the championship extravaganza, the ACC is sat here with, just the ACC championship game, and the other teams don't even have play-in games because they don't matter, and you don't even have spots for them anyways. That's how different it is. I'm telling you right now, many months ago on the radio, I was told, Morgan, you're overreacting here. You're taking this, you're too stressed out about this and Clemson's going to be fine. This doesn't look like a good situation for a team in the ACC. Well, yes, Clemson's always going to be the champion of the ACC. Maybe, yeah, they'll probably compete for that number 1 or number 2 spot more often than not. We've seen that. But you got to understand that the teams that they're competing against with these recruits, the teams that they're competing against with these money, they're making more money, they're getting more games, they're getting on TV more, they're getting more opportunities to get into the playoffs, whereas you are still stuck where you've always been. Is that a good thing or bad? I think it's something that's a huge concern for Clemson, and I think you should be concerned as well. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about Clemson's financial situation and how it will compare to the rivals as we go through this whole, meeting that they're having this weekend. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering or worrying if you were going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. And while they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress. And you get the most money back guaranteed. All while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get a tax expert right now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only on iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. All right, so the second part of the conversation was about Clemson's financial reality versus the SEC. And when I say the SEC, I mean South Carolina. ACC schools like Clemson are going to have to spend 50% more of their media revenue on player salaries, 50% or more on their media revenue on player salaries. While meanwhile, SEC Big Ten schools like South Carolina, who make more money, can have more money to reinvest. And I have a lot of people say, well, Morgan, it's not that much. It's just a couple of million here or there. You don't understand. Look at what I said on segment 1. They're going to get more games. We know that. They're pushing for that now. They're getting more spots into the playoffs. We know that. They're pushing for that now. We know that they have the biggest TV revenue and they have the most viewers as a conference as a whole for the Big Ten and the SEC, and they've teamed up. And you're outside looking in the ACC. We know these things are true. We know that ESPN wants this to happen for those two big conferences. So meanwhile, while the SEC and the Big Ten schools are making more money, and you could say maybe just a couple million here or there, hey, wouldn't you like to have a couple million more than your competitor? If you're a business owner right now, wouldn't you like to have that? Couldn't you do something with that and be able to make a difference that maybe your competitor couldn't? I think you would like that. Would you want to see South Carolina make $5, $10, $15, $20 million more than you every single year, and then also get more opportunities to get in the playoffs while you sit around and continue to do what you've been doing and have to be the best or nothing in the ACC? Fans need to understand this. Clemson makes about $40 million in TV revenue, meaning $20 million is going to go to player salaries. We already know they need to do that. Now, South Carolina, on the other hand, makes $52.5 million in TV revenue. Well, that's about 38% compared to 50%. So you understand the gap where I'm coming from. South Carolina can reinvest in facilities and staff and recruiting, while Clemson has to limit what they can do. And yes, you could say, well, Morgan, I know that they're going to be smarter than South Carolina. Yeah, we get that. That's definitely what's going to happen. But I'm telling you, more money is more money is more money. And eventually, even if you waste a little bit here or there, you're going to have more money than your competitor. And I don't really like that. And the thing where I really get frustrated the most about this unfairness is it's a huge issue for ACC teams that have SEC rivals. Clemson, South Carolina, Florida State, Florida, Louisville, Kentucky, Georgia Tech, Georgia. All of these teams have to play them every single year because they are a natural rivalry, which I want to see. That is pure college football. But are you going to be okay with having to play that team at the end of the year, every single year, and you know they're making more money than you, and they may not even have as good of a record as you? They may have 5 more losses than you, but they're going to make $20 million more than you? I don't know how much I really like that. Now, the good thing is that the ACC has already kind of decided, hey, the money that we do have, the TV revenue that we do get, it's going to be pooled for the best brands and the best teams. So that would favor Clemson. You know, I would like to say Florida State, but it's probably not. At least, I don't know, maybe this year they will, because they have a whole new team with their transfer portal. It's hard to say, but we know that it's probably going to favor a Dabo Swinney-led Clemson team very well, because they're going to be one of the better teams in the ACC. They have been. But the disadvantages definitely concern me. And maybe you get into the comments, maybe you message me over on X at the Morgan T Show and you say, Morg, I love your show. Thank you. I appreciate it. But maybe you're just a little too much on this. Maybe you're a little too nervous about this. And I know I'm a nervous fan. I'll be honest with you. I think that fans should be concerned, though. Financial disadvantages in revenue sharing with your players. Think about it this way. Coaches make more money as they get more success, but you're having to pay for players, you're having to pay for coaches, and you're getting increased staff. We're already seeing this. The staffs are turning into professional staffs where you have, 2 running back coaches and an offensive coordinator that doesn't even recruit and a defensive coordinator with 5 analysts, and they are all getting on the payroll. And, there's a lot going on. Then you have your recruiting staff that goes out there, and then you have your what was the new guy that they just brought in that's going to be like a player development, like a GM. I mean, you're going to have to spread this money out with your staff off the field. That's going to increase. You're going to have administrative costs. Then you're going to have player costs. Then you're going to have coaches costs. And where are you going to update your stadium? Where are you going to update your facilities? It's going to quickly, dwindle down. And then what money are you going to have for recruiting, right? So definitely a concern for me. I don't know how it's all going to shake out. I would love to say that I think Clemson should stay in the ACC until there's one big, massive super conference. But from what I'm hearing and reading about this week, it seems like that they're having meetings right now between the SEC and the Big Ten, and they're going to do their thing. And the other teams are just going to have to hope they get the leftovers. And I know any Clemson fan out there is not going to really like that for sure. All right, so coming up next in our final segment of the day, we're going to talk, should Clemson stay in the ACC or not? Or should they be looking for a way out? Maybe they already are looking for a way out. It's great that Clemson has dominated the ACC for many years. But with the SEC and the Big Ten controlling, from what I can tell, controlling the structure of the postseason, and now they're going to make this play-in championship weekend. No, it's not going to be just one game and everybody gets an equal amount of games. No, it's going to be the SEC in the last week of November or first week of December, is going to have 4 monster games from their best teams, their best 8 teams, while the ACC just has their 2 teams and the rest are sitting at home wishing they were in another conference. You understand where this is going, right? Does it make sense to stay in the ACC when you know that this is kind of what they're trying to get into place? My stance all week has been, again, that Clemson should wait until there's a Super League. But if the SEC Big Ten playoff structure gives way and then this championship weekend extravaganza happens and it's all about them and all the eyes are on them, Clemson has to think about what their future is going to be. And maybe, Morgan, you're telling me, hey, Morgan, it's already decided. They've sued them. They're trying to get out. And I don't know what's going on with that. It seems like everything came out and was in front and center. Have we talked about this whole lawsuit since it first was established? I haven't seen much of it. And what I have seen has been just trying to Band-Aid it and make up for the better teams. But even still, that's going to hurt your conference overall because, the weak teams in these conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to still make a bukus of money. While now the ACC, their weak teams are getting even less money. So you're not going to be able to build up your conference over time. You're not going to be able to build powerhouses from the lower levels up. It's just going to be Clemson and maybe someone else. And maybe you're okay with that because it's Clemson. But I know that a lot of fans, they want better matchups. They want more times on television. Hey, they want more opportunities to prove that they can be and belong in the playoffs. You don't want to be left out. That's for sure. I have FOMO about a lot of things. Fear of missing out. I don't want to be missed out. I don't want to miss out on this for sure. Now, would Clemson have a better playoff path in the SEC? Well, if they have more teams that qualify, I mean, my goodness, you could lose multiple games and still qualify in. Now, we know Clemson has been able to sneak their way into the ACC championship game and win the ACC championship game with help of Fran Brown and Syracuse. We know that. But yeah, Clemson, could they be a top 8 team in the SEC? Yeah, definitely. Could they be a top 4 team in the SEC? Yeah, definitely. Could they be a top 2 team? Yeah, I think so. More years than not, Dabo Swinney, I would trust him being able to build a team like that can compete. Now, you got to have a good quarterback here and there. I get it. You got to have a line of scrimmage that can dominate. I get that. But I think Clemson could definitely be one of the top 8, top 4 teams in the SEC and get an opportunity to play and host a play-in game on a championship weekend extravaganza. But I do understand, I have the fear of, hey, you kind of run the ACC, you kind of always in the ACC championship game, and who cares if the ACC only has 2 spots because you're probably going to get it. You're probably going to get one of those 2. So maybe the percentages aren't that bad. Maybe they aren't. But if there's 8 teams from the SEC, my goodness, that's half their conference. that get an opportunity at the end of the season to go to the playoffs versus 2 out of 17, 16, whatever the ACC has. The percentages are not there. If the ACC only gets 2 spots, do you think that they still need to stay? I do feel like time is getting short. The more that these articles are coming out, the more that I'm seeing that they're having these meetings in New Orleans where they're talking about things, and it's not really the ACC at the table. It's the ACC hoping to get a good shake of the leftovers. That's where I get my biggest concern. Is the money gap too big to ignore? Clemson has always been a fan base that travels and that buys tickets and that supports their team. You don't have to look out. You can look outside of football and understand that. Clemson is, in a lot of ways, jokingly, in the middle of farmland, but has a massive stadium that is bigger than most NFL stadiums. I didn't say nicer. It is a great stadium. It is a nice stadium, but they're bigger than a lot of NFL capacity stadiums. So the campus is beautiful. The facilities are up to date and top notch. The stadium is huge, and it's packed out regularly for all the games. Now, they also travel. Clemson fans travel when their team needs to go. I've been to Tampa. I've been to Arizona. Clemson fans travel, and we love that paw, and we love the $2 bill, the stamp Tiger Paw $2 bill. So I think that Clemson's fan base can step up to the plate. You look at baseball, they pack the house there. You look at softball, they pack the house there. You look at gymnastics, men's basketball, and women's basketball has had their best attendance in decades, I think. So Clemson fans will fill the seats. They will spend their money. And we're donating to the NIL. Not me personally, as you know, my problems with it, but I will tell you, Clemson fans, the ones that got the good money, the ones that I'm flying in my jet, well, maybe not yet, but the ones that I hope to fly in my jet one day, those have the money, they are donating. So Clemson fans are putting the bill. They're footing the bill, if you will. Clemson can be in a financial position, but as we've talked about on the radio, there's also a limit. There is an exhaustion point of this. And that's why the revenue sharing thing is great, because I think it'll get away from that exhaustion point of just having another thing to donate to. But long term, if we're going to go to a revenue model, and I think we should, because I think it's more fair, if we're going to go to one, you can't have these TV right deals that are $10-20 million less, even $5 million. You could say maybe South Carolina or your rivals, they could squander $5 million, so that's not a big deal. But year over year over year over year, it's not going to be good long term to have a big pay gap, to have a big financial revenue gap of TV generation. Clemson fans are going to have to wait around to figure out what the answers are going to be with this lawsuit, what the answers are going to be this summer after these meetings. What are they going to do in 2026? Definitely very concerned, but not concerned as Clemson as a university, which I graduated from, as a program, which I attend multiple sports events and I love them and I'll always go to them no matter what. I don't have a problem, and I'm not concerned that Clemson is not going to survive and thrive. But I am concerned to how we're going to get to where we're going to get. And I don't want my favorite team and your favorite team to be left behind. So I think really, as long as Clemson's not being left behind, I'm okay with where they're at right now, but things have got to change for the better. Really, it all revolves around money. Unfortunately, college football now, it's about the money. Well, it may have always been about the money. We just didn't really want to talk about it that way. And maybe, just maybe, the players now are getting their fair shake as well. And that's the right thing to do too, in my opinion. Hey, that's it for me today in this show. I appreciate everyone listening and tuning in on the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and also on YouTube, subscribing there. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. I love reading your comments over there. And I love it when you come follow me over on X at The Morgan T Show. I will talk to you about Clemson any day of the week. Don't be afraid to DM me over there. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. And for your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Schad and Andy Patton. Don't wait for March. It'll be the most informed college basketball fan. You will be the most informed college basketball fan right now. Find out Locked On College Basketball on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, hey, that's it for me. I will see you tomorrow, and I'll see you at the top of the hill.